Hello, I am Kelvin, and I would be your guide on this record for everything you need to get started as a product manager. You might want to ask why are we having another PM channel or video? So the answer to that was this year I transitioned from being a software engineer to a product manager. And unlike what I thought about, there wasn't any go-to place to find a one-stop, easy, straightforward resources or contents to help me on my first product management role. I had to do all sorts of reaching out, um, learning from different sources to make sense of things. And my goal for this record is that by the end of it, you have this one stop place to get everything you need to get started and be a champion on your first product management role in a tech startup. Who is or who are these content for? Okay, so from the title, if you are a product manager, obviously, if if this is your first time being a product manager in a tech startup, then this is perfectly for you. If or this is specially for you rather. Also, if you are trying to learn about product management, what product managers do, especially for tech startups, then this is also designed for you. I must say that this content might not be particularly useful if you are a product manager in a tech startup that maybe have their MVP already. The experience I will be sharing is targeted at pre-MVP to the point of MVP. After MVP, I will have a different content at that point. I'm a software engineer, product manager, and community lead, popularly known as dev advocate. For the past 4 years, I've worked heavily on web and web stacks. I've also founded and lead a tech community in Ibadan, raising over £5,000. And presently, I work as a product manager at a tech startup. So if you unfortunately or fortunately get to listen to background of some birds, um, pardon me, we rear chicken in my house. Okay, so that's it about me. And yeah, let's go on with the record. Disclaimer. So I would like to stress that while I might mention some of these things as a step-by-step guide, most times what product managers do are difficult to fit to a box of step-by-step procedure. So what I'm putting as step one may be what you do on step three on your end. What I put as step four or three could be what you do on step five or six. It doesn't really matter. And as we go further into the audio, I'm sure you would kind of like make sense of these things I'm saying. Before we progress into the content fully, we might want to start off with the definition of product manager. I think this content will be half big if we can't define product management or what product managers do. Yeah, and so the next section, what product managers do. I think, like I've mentioned before, it's difficult to box what product managers do. They are usually influenced by the stage the company is and what the company defines as product management or the responsibility they expect from you. However, from my own experience, I've realized product managers can be categorized into some groups. One or first is product managers can be project managers. Don't fret, we'll define all of this term in details. But I'm trying to like categorize usually what you'd see product managers do. So Product managers can be project managers. In some cases, they could combine the role of, which is the second category, combine the role of project management and product management to the core, like core product management. And the last stage, they could combine project management, product management, and engineering management. That's what we call technical product manager. Okay, so we've been able to categorize what product managers do into three categories. The first is solely as a project manager or solely as a product manager. We'll explain later. The second is combining the project management role and product management role. And then lastly, combining project management role, product management role, and engineering management role. We usually call these people technical product managers. So let's divide them in details. Um, Project managers basically dishes tasks. They break down tasks, follow up on timelines, assign tasks, sometimes look at the quality of the work, but that should naturally be assigned to QAs. But yeah, that's what project managers do. Break down tasks, assign them, follow up on deadlines, the progress, and the likes. For product managers, they are like mini CEOs. So you are the core or the intermediary between the stakeholders, the direct users or final consumers, and then the engineering team. As a product manager, you are concerned about managing budgets of the shareholders and the profit expectation. At the same time, you want to ensure that whatever you guys are building truly solves the problem for users. And then to achieve this, you need to sometimes be around your engineer. So that's basically what product managers do. They are more financially, yeah, I mean, depending though, but they are more finance specifics compared to project managers. And then for technical product manager, pardon me, those guys combine project management, assigning tasks, product management, um, combining and managing the expectations from multiple stakeholders, which are the shareholders, users, and engineers. And at the same time, they also manage the engineers. So they ensure that the codes are scalable, performance based, they motivate the engineering team. Usually, depending on how big the company is, you need a an engineering manager for that. But like the role describes, sometimes product managers can also take or combine this role. And that sums it up for the definition of what product managers do, especially at startup level. You could learn more or gather jargon online, but like I mentioned, it's really difficult to box, to have in a box what product managers do. But with these three categories we just highlighted, I think it fully covers what product managers do. And now that we've been able to have that off uh, task for the record, let's move on to the contents proper. Catch you on the other side. So the first thing, which I regard as step one on your journey of being a an awesome product manager, is at what point were you hired? So that's the first step. You being hired on the team. Usually, this can happen in two phases. It could happen before the engineering team is set up, and then you are part of the hiring team to then gather engineers, or after the engineering team has been set up. In that case, maybe there's a recruiter somewhere, or the founders have been able to recruit a team, and you are there to now, do your thing together with the engineering team. Those are the two stages. For me, I ideally prefer the first stage, which is before the engineers have been set up. At that point, you want to influence, or you particularly look out for what you want in those engineers. From our definition for product managers, remember that we said they are mini CEOs. And one of the things CEOs take very seriously is being very observant of who they bring in to their team or their engineering team. It might not be very obvious for a start, but it's a big deal. I think the success of a product is highly determined by the engineering team. So being in a position to influence your team from the start, like deciding or particularly looking for something, is very ideal for me. I don't want this video to be extremely long, so we could have another record that describes what to look for in a developer or a designer for a startup role. But for now, you need to know that there are things you have to specifically look at. The second category that we mentioned on at what stage you were hired is post um, post engineering team. So at that point, maybe the recruiter or the founders already have a team and you were employed after. To deal with this, you would need to first understand your team. You don't just start off with assigning tasks. You want to talk with them, know their strengths, things they struggle with, how they work, how you intend to manage them going forward. You want to make them like you because it's just like students who fail in the math class because they don't like their teacher. So if your team, your engineering team, don't like you, there are possibilities you struggle. You might want to say they don't need to like you. They just need to do their job, but it's not really so. You want to create some form of friendliness, warmness, and yeah, we have a different section again on what to do at this stage. But like I mentioned, I don't want to make this record unnecessarily long, so we have a different record for that. However, you can always reach out to me anywhere on the web as Kelvin Sex. You could book a consultancy or just chat me up and then we could discuss some of this. But I think that's enough on at what points you were employed or points of employment, which is the first step as a program manager. The second step is now that you are employed or you've been employed, you want to speak with the founders as quickly as possible. You want to understand the vision they have for the product. You want to understand the mission they have for the team. You want to understand the timelines. Please, it's very important you don't argue with your founders at start because founders usually would come up with unrealistic expectations or timelines. But I mean, you just need to record at this point. So the second step is contracts for future documents. Contracts for future documents. Like I mentioned, at this point, you've been employed and you want to speak with the founders. You want to talk with them ASAP. You want to have an idea for the vision, mission, timelines. How do they intend to make money with the product? You want to know what platforms you are building for. These are questions you should preferably have over a call rather than over some email chats. Okay, so and at the same time, remember that product managers are they are mini CEOs. So you manage multiple stakeholders. So it's important that you kind of like discuss, have this one-on-one discussions with your founders. That's what you want to do at this point. You want to gather those things. And as a product manager, you need to document everything. I mentioned you don't argue at this point. If they come up with unrealistic timeline, just take notes. At this point, you want to take notes only. Also, depending on how convincing you may sound, you want to have an idea for budget. How much do they have ready? How much do they want to spend on this product until MVP? These are things you also want to collect at this point, we are still in the process of making a contract for future documents. Okay. So now that you've had meetings with the founders, you want to have a meeting with your engineering team or your design team. You want to take this document, this rough sketch that you've gotten from the founders, you want to table it to your engineers. They say, okay, these are the features we want to build. This is how we intend to make money with this app. This is the timeline. Do you think this is achievable? Now, this is super important because this is where you get the argument to extend timelines with the founders. Okay. So you want to ask your engineers, see, these are the things we are asked to build. Okay. This is how we intend to make money with this app. You think this is achievable this timeline? So they would usually come up with, oh, it's achievable, or oh, I don't think this is achievable in this timeline. You want to get everyone point of view. This can be a very long call. You want to be really sure. Okay. So when you've elicited or you've gotten the response from your engineers, you would most likely extend the founder's timeline. Like I mentioned, founders usually have this unrealistic timeline expectation. But based on the facts you've gotten from the engineers, you then make sense of this. Don't forget also to document these things. And during this stage, you should be coming up with the MVP document, right? And then you want to take these arguments and the MVP and revert, okay, to the founders to say, oh, we might need to adjust the timeline, and these are the reasons, these are the reasons, these are the reasons, these are the features that we think we can do in these timelines, and another back and forth. This stage is super important. You need to agree on a feature document, a timeline, and a budget. Timelines usually influence budgets, and timelines are expensive for startups. So you need to convince the founders because when you are extending the project by months, it most likely means cost from the founders, cost on the team, cost on the product, cost on the expected returns. So these things are like super important. Now, when you've agreed with the founders, you want to come up with the MVP documents or the feature document. Please make this a PDF and send a copy, preferably signed, but it might not be needed. But send a PDF to all the founders and also your engineering team. There is a reason for this. Trust is super important with your founders. You want them to trust you. You don't want a scenario in the future where they are saying, oh, but we thought you were supposed to add this feature, or we thought you were supposed to do this, but why is it not on the MVP? So all these things get settled on that PDF. Okay. So you might want to say, oh, what do we need on this feature documents? One, you want to have listed all the features for the MVP, the timeline, the agreed payments or budgets. Yeah. So those are the important things you want to have on the feature document. Okay. Now that we are done with that part, the next stage is WBS, which is work breakdown structure. Yeah, work breakdown structure. Now that you have the feature document and your MVP, you want to have like a spreadsheet where you break down most of these features into weekly summary. Now, that weekly summary is a guide for building. Okay. So, and it's also a guide for condition to hire or fire. Okay. Yeah, I mean, product management is not all rosy. At some point, you might need to fire, and then there should be agreed structures on why you are firing. Okay. So the work breakdown structure for me is usually a spreadsheet that breaks down or have like a statement summary of, as an engineer, let's say we are working on an MVP for 3 months. I want to have a statement breakdown of everything I expect you to work on as an engineer per week. This document would also be shared by the founder and everyone on the engineering team. The reason for this is so that everyone can anticipate the amount of work that is expected for them in advance. You could see, oh, these are the things I'm working on this month. These are the things I'll be working on next month. These are the things I'll be working on the third month. When you come up with this document, you want to also take it to the engineers to say, okay, see what we are doing. Do you think what's coming up on this first week is fine, or should we move us on the fifth week to the first week? So all those things. Okay, do you think this is visible in a week? Let's say, for example, week 5, build and written test on the chat feature. Usually, this can be difficult to make in a week. So some features could take, or some statements could take part 1 and part 2. So if you have week 4, build and write test for chat feature part 1, week 5, build and write test for chat feature part 2. So the whole idea is just to have an agreed one statement place. Okay. Also, you remember I mentioned that this WBS document for me is usually the standard I use in firing. Okay. So when you are agreeing at this point that you could do those things in a week, I would ask you, okay, I would use that document to follow up on your progress. I will use that document to appraise your work, and it happens every week. So if you are telling me that you can do this week, then it has to be done. However, if you feel like, oh, this can be done in a week, then you should provide that argument that, okay, let's say for chat feature, I wrote provide um build and write test, assigned for week 4. You might want to, make me realize as a product manager, if you're an engineer, to say, oh, see, these are the reasons why this can happen in a week. I think this should be spread out around 3 weeks. Maybe you should combine it with smaller tax here or here. The whole idea is to have a an agreed structure, an agreed expectation of what is expected per week. Okay, and then share these documents with the founders. If let's say you are working on an MVP for 6 months, you usually don't want, it might be difficult for you to come up with all of those things 6 months advance. You might want to start off with 2 months and progressively update the document. Yeah, so that's it about the WBS document. So now that we've had the WBS documents part settled, the next stage is the engineers and the designers coming up with their own respective documents describing that they truly understand the products, the stacks they intend to use, why they are using those stacks, third parties or third party softwares that will be used while building the MVP. I think we are on step 5, okay, and it's a tailored document from engineers and designers describing that they truly understand what you are building, the stacks, the tooling, and if there are any third party software that will be relied on. Let me give you a hint as a product manager. You need to identify these things earlier. You don't want at the middle of building, then the engineer is telling you, oh, you know what, let's change this stack, or we need to use, or I did not anticipate this third party software. If this document don't exist, it's difficult for you to appraise, it's difficult for you to hold someone responsible. So you want to hold them responsible very early, and they need to be very thoughtful on this, you know, documents. If as a backend you want to use Node.js over Go language, or you want to use Verify Me for KYC over something else, these documents you want it to cover it. You want to, you know, you want a detailed descriptions for these things, and keep it. You don't need to judge them. You don't need to, except if you are a technical project manager, you need to be like very detailed on these documents. For now, you just need to keep it so that when something changes, you need to tell them that, but you mentioned here, okay, for example, let's say you are 3 months into the project and they are telling you, oh, I realize that Angular doesn't fit this work. So we want to shift to Vue, or we want to shift from Nest.js or Nest.js to Node.js. 3 months into the project, you should have anticipated all of these things. Okay, as a product manager, you should have these documents intact to say, but you said this and this, so what changed? Okay, so you want to know these things. You really want to know. You don't just want the engineers to pick a stack out of the blue because they can. Okay. So, although, I mean, that's something for them to decide on. For you, you just want to have a record of it. After these documents have been provided, you want to um, start assigning tasks with Jira or Trello or any of this agile software or linear. We have this, there's this popular linear. Yeah, linear that is also getting popular. I don't think one is better than the other, Jira or Trello or whatnot. I don't think any is better than the other. You just go there, create tickets. If you are combining project management role, you want to create tickets and all of those things. And one, I think a very good advice at this stage is ensure each tickets are broken down as much as possible. Don't make tickets clumsy, whereby one ticket looks like 10 tickets. I made that mistake. Okay. So you want to break things down. You want to, break things down, assign tasks, give if the priority is high or low or not, all of those things. Again, we would be making a separate video for all of these things. And if you perhaps need my help or you want to consult, you can always reach out to me on Kelvin Flex anywhere on the web. Okay. So I mean that's it about the stage on Jira and Trello. Truly, I feel like we've covered most parts. Okay. Now I will just be sharing wisdoms from my own first experience as a product manager. But if we should make a recap, okay, for these things, we said the first step is at what point you were employed. The second is a contract for feature documents, where you provide the feature documents, the MVP, and then the WBS documents, and then, a descriptive document from the engineers and designers on what stack they are using, why, if there are third-party softwares that you guys will be using on the app, and all of that. And then you move on to assigning through Jira. Yeah, also GitHub issues. Let me quickly chip that in. Because I was a technical project manager, so I need to test, I need to read the code, all of those things. So when there are issues, you want to like use GitHub issues. So you could easily track and use branch. I mean, why not? Why not, right? Use branches and all of this. I just wanted to add that. So the last part is wisdom. So wisdom are basically knowledge that have been put to test. They could be good or bad. So they are usually relative. They are usually relative. And I'll be sharing mine. One, sack early. However, have standards for sacking. Okay. In my case, the WBS document is what I use in appraising your progress and speed of work. Don't forget, I didn't just come up with the WBS documents. It came out as an agreement from all of us. Oh, this is achievable in a week. This is achievable in a week. This is achievable in a week. So week one, I come to check. Oh, you were supposed to do this on week one. On the same WBS documents, there's a column. Like I mentioned, I use spreadsheet. There's a column for done, in progress, or not done. Okay. So if there's something that's meant to be done in a week and is using 3 weeks, then that calls for some questioning. You're supposed to anticipate this. You agree to this. Because that means we are shifting timelines, right? Remember, we work in weeks, right? So you are making things expensive for me, for the founders. And where things get nutsy as a product manager is I learned it the hard way. Don't joke with timelines. Don't joke with agreed timelines. At that point, the founders could sack you and there's nothing you could do. I mean, that's your business, that timeline. Okay. So what I do is when I see you've defaulted 3 weeks on the WBS document. So let's say you're supposed to work on this thing for 1 week, it wasn't done. The second week, it wasn't done. The third week, it wasn't done. then you might be on a roll of getting fired. Okay, so the first wisdom is sack quickly. You want to take off someone who is taking your time. The second wisdom is when coming up with the feature documents, talk with users. You can always talk with users after. Okay, users that want to use the end consumers. You can always talk with them after. Okay, you want to know, oh, this feature or this part that we mentioned as the parts where we would make money from, does it work with you? You want to maybe use survey. I prefer talking with users one on one, knowing their pain points, what they are struggling with, how our product solves them, the parts that we think they should pay for, are they really willing to pay for it? So you want to, also do all of these things while development core keep going. Okay. You want to get this information, maybe adjust the feature document. So those are the reasons for all of these documents. So when you make adjustments, everyone needs to be updated because you need to send a new PDF why you adjusted it, why you added the feature, why you removed the feature, you know, and all of that. So that's the second wisdom. The third one is deal with the third party software early. One popular feature for most apps that third party software handles are KYC. So you want to identify business reasons for what type of KYC is being used, what KYC would be used. You want to have access to their APIs very early because those things could take forever. Trust me, I've been there, done that. Okay, so it could take forever. So you want to deal with those things really quickly. You want to identify what KYC we are using, what parts are we dealing with. It doesn't necessarily have to be KYC, okay? But that's what I realize most startups, it's popular with most startups are signing to third parties. So you want to get those things quickly. You want to have access to those APIs very early. Sometimes it doesn't have to be KYC, maybe payments. So maybe the payments experience on the app is handled by maybe Stripe or let's say in Nigeria, Paystack or Flutterwave. You want to have access to this documentation quickly. You want to um, see why we need this, why we don't need this. You just anything third party that is out of your control, you want to deal with it very quickly. I think that's the third. The fourth wisdom is charge well. Product managers do a hell of a job. They do a hell of a job. So if you think you are overcharging, you are not, because especially as a technical product manager, you are doing three persons job. You are working as a project manager, you are signing tasks, following the timelines, you are talking with users, you are talking with stakeholders, and those are not chips because you keep having meetings with your stakeholders. Okay. Wisdom five, have weekly stand-ups. You don't need daily stand-ups. Really, you don't need daily stand-ups. If you've done some of these things like I mentioned, you don't need daily stand-ups. Have weekly stand-ups with your team and maybe bi-weekly meetings with your founders. Very important. You want to keep them abreast of everything. And after those meetings, make a documentation or a minute. Usually there are AIs to do these things and send a PDF copy to everyone. Also, prioritize what your founders ask for. See, those guys are the one putting the money down. I think that's wisdom six. When they ask you for something, you need to provide those things really quickly. You need to provide those things really quickly. You want to prioritize them. That I think that's one thing I really need to say because I made that mistake of being too concentrated on the engineers and the product evolution and development and would neglect the founders in some of these decisions. Okay, they deserve to be informed. So I think those are the things um you need to know. I think those are the things you need to know. If these things are followed up squarely. I think you should have a wonderful experience. These things I mentioned are the main things I did, or the main lessons I learned on my first role as a product manager. There are other things we didn't cover in this record that I think I should mention. Things like how to influence founders, how to impact the engineering team, how to elicit useful responses from users, how to identify area of concentration. I think I kind of like gave a hint on area of concentration. One of them is one of them is how do we intend to make money, or what experience makes us different with our MVP. Okay, so that part could guide you on the area of concentration, like what feature maybe during design or engineering design you need to be like, you need to put in more attention to. Okay, so all of the things would be coming up in other videos on this channel. So look forward to it. But I hope you enjoyed, spending close to 30 minutes with me. I hope this lets you see into the tremendous work product managers do. I think the future is bright for product management, and we can't wait to have you join us. Please, if you have any question, any addition, if you want to work with me, you can reach out to me on Kelvin Sex anywhere on the web, maybe on Twitter. Yeah, Twitter preferably, or my Gmail at kelvinsex@gmail.com. Kelvin Sex being spelled KELVINSEKX at gmail.com. Thank you and bye.